In Tarsus, they still tell a story about a secret under the earth, a queen of snakes, a broken promise, and a death the snakes have never been allowed to learn. There is a version of Tarsus that belongs to streets, stone arches, old baths, and the heat of southern Anatolia. And then there is another Tarsus. In that second city, under the visible one, a secret survives. It is not written on a monument in a way everyone can agree on. It does not behave like a clean museum label. It moves through houses, glass painting, copper trays, embroidered cloth, television sets, children's stories, and whispered warnings. The secret is Shahmaran. She is usually imagined as the queen of serpents, wise, beautiful, dangerous, protective, half woman and half snake. In some tellings, she lives beneath Tarsus. In others, she belongs to the wider memory of Anatolia, Mesopotamia, Kurdish storytelling, Turkish folk art, Persian words, old manuscript traditions, and the moral geography of caves and wells. The story sounds simple at first. A young man discovers her hidden world. She trusts him. He promises silence. The world above demands her body as medicine. The promise breaks. Shahmaran dies. But the legend keeps changing shape, because it is not only a monster story. It is a story about knowledge, who owns it, who steals it, and what it costs. It is a story about betrayal, not the kind that happens because evil announces itself, but the kind that happens when love, fear, illness, kingship, and survival press on one weak human being. And it is a story about why some secrets stay buried, not because they are forgotten, but because everyone is afraid of what would happen if the truth finally came up. Before we follow the story underground, look at where Shahmaran appears above ground. In many Anatolian homes, her image has been treated as more than decoration. She appears in glass paintings, textiles, embroidery, copperwork, ceramics, tiles, carpets, and contemporary art. Sometimes she is bright and frontal, with a crowned human face and a long patterned serpent body. Sometimes she is surrounded by flowers. Sometimes her tail splits into two symmetrical snakes, like a mirror trying to hold two truths at once. This matters because folklore is not only what people say, it is also what people keep near them. Scholars writing about Shahmaran in Anatolian folk culture describe a figure who is wise, benevolent, ageless, and usually female, while regional versions preserve different details. Other studies of Anatolian art point out that people have used her image as a protective sign, something associated with good fortune, protection from evil, or the guarding of the household. That is why Shahmaran is difficult to reduce to one meaning. She can be a queen, a healer, a warning, a mother, a talisman, a betrayed lover, a supernatural animal, a folk art icon, and a memory of older serpent symbolism all at once. Her image is beautiful, but beauty is not the safest thing about her. The safer mistake is to think the picture is only pretty. In Anatolian folklore, the snake is rarely just a snake. It can guard, heal, poison, renew, and remember. Shahmaran gathers those meanings into a single body. Half human, half serpent, fully secret. Even her name has layers. Shahmaran is usually explained through Persian roots. Shah, meaning king or ruler, and Maran, connected to snakes. The phrase points toward the ruler of snakes, often rendered in English as the Serpent Queen, even though the grammar and gender of the figure shift across languages and traditions. That linguistic mixture is already a clue. Shahmaran is not locked inside one neat ethnic box. Her story has circulated across Anatolia, Mesopotamia, Kurdish regions, Turkish oral culture. Persianate literary traditions, Arabic story worlds, and local memories attached to places like Tarsus and Mardin. Different communities claim her, reshape her, defend her, and recognize themselves in her. That can make modern arguments about origin intense. But for storytelling, the more interesting fact is that Shahmaran behaves like a border figure. She lives at thresholds. Woman and serpent, earth and underworld, cure and poison, secrecy and revelation, folk art and manuscript literature, local legend and transregional myth. She belongs to the places where cultures touch. That is also why the name feels older than the exact versions we tell today. It carries the sound of courts and stories, of Persian words moving into Turkish and Kurdish speech, of old books and oral retellings, of a snake queen who can be familiar in one village and strange in the next. If we ask for one final origin, the legend resists us. But if we ask what kind of world could produce her, the answer becomes clearer. It is a world where the underground is alive, where animals know what humans do not, where healing knowledge can be sacred, and where betrayal can poison an entire city for generations. The most famous storyline begins not with Shahmaran, but with a human mistake. The young man is called Camsab in many Anatolian tellings, though the name changes. Camsab, Camsab, Câmasb, talismans, and other forms appear across literary and oral versions. In the older Câmasbnâme tradition, he is connected to Daniel's son and to a chain of nested stories, but in popular retellings he often becomes easier to picture. A poor young man, not powerful, not wise, and not ready for what he is about to find. He goes out with companions. They discover honey in a well or cave. Greed enters the story quietly. The others take what they can and abandon him below. This is a brilliant opening, because it turns a small human betrayal into the doorway to a larger one. Camsab is not a hero riding into the underworld. He is left there. At first the hidden place is terrifying. Then it becomes wondrous. He finds a passage into a world beneath the earth, a chamber or garden filled with snakes, light, abundance, and order. This is not a nest of chaos. It is a kingdom. At the center is Shahmaran. The queen of snakes sees the human who has stumbled into her realm. She does not immediately destroy him. In many versions, she receives him, speaks with him, and teaches him. The abandoned boy becomes the guest of the hidden queen. But the well is more than a plot device. It is the vertical line between two moral worlds. Above ground, men abandon each other over honey. Below ground, serpents practice hospitality. The legend has already turned the human world upside down. Shahmaran's underground kingdom is one of the strongest images in the whole legend. It is easy to make the underworld dark, ugly, and evil. This story often does the opposite. The hidden place can appear as a garden, a palace, a luminous cave, or a chamber filled with thousands of pale snakes living in harmony. The danger is real, but it is not mindless. That changes the emotional center of the myth. Shahmaran is not simply a monster waiting in a hole. She is the ruler of a society. She has order, knowledge, attendance, and laws. Her world is secret because secrecy protects it from the violence of the surface. Camsab stays there for a long time in many tellings. He learns the language of herbs. He learns cures. He learns secrets of animals, plants, illness, and the body. Some versions make this knowledge the beginning of his transformation into a healer. Some connect the story to Luqman Hakim, the legendary wise physician, whose name carries its own deep resonance in the Islamic and Anatolian imagination. Whether Camsab literally becomes Lockman in a given version matters less than the pattern. Medicine comes from the hidden body of nature, but it does not come for free. This is where Shahmaran becomes more than a character. She becomes the keeper of a boundary. Human beings want knowledge, especially healing knowledge, but they also want power over the source of that knowledge. We want the cure without the debt. The garden below is beautiful because it shows what humans lack. It is also doomed because humans eventually remember where it is. At some point, Camsab wants to leave. This is one of the most human moments in the legend. The hidden kingdom may be wondrous, but he misses the world above. His mother, his house, sunlight, ordinary life, the imperfect place he came from. Shahmaran understands the danger. If he returns, he carries a map inside him. He knows the way to her. So she asks for a promise. Do not reveal where I am. In folk tales, a promise can be stronger than a wall until it is not. Camsab goes back. In some versions, he keeps the secret for years. That detail is important because it prevents the story from becoming too simple. He is not always portrayed as a man who immediately betrays her. He can be weak and still sincere. He can love Shahmaran and still fail her. The legend understands that betrayal does not always begin as betrayal. Sometimes it begins as silence under pressure. Sometimes it begins with a secret no person can carry forever. And sometimes the body itself gives the secret away. In some versions, anyone who has seen Shahmaran becomes marked, or their skin changes when they enter water, revealing contact with the Serpent Queen. The human body becomes an archive against its owner's will. That is terrifying because it means the promise is not only moral, it is physical. The secret has entered him. The story now waits for the moment when the city above ground becomes desperate enough to search every body for the trace of what lies below. Years pass, then the ruler becomes ill. Different versions name him differently or leave him as a generic king or sultan. What matters is the shape of the crisis. The highest body in the human city fails. The palace cannot cure itself. Physicians and advisors search for an answer, and the answer points downward. The cure is Shahmaran. This is the brutal hinge of the myth. Healing is possible, but only if the hidden queen is captured, killed, boiled, divided, or consumed. The city above ground can survive only by destroying the secret world below it. The vizier often plays a dark role here. He knows or discovers that Shahmaran's flesh is medicine. In some retellings, he manipulates the search to gain wisdom for himself. In others, he is simply the voice of palace logic. If the king must live, someone else must die. This is why Shahmaran is such a powerful folk figure. The story sees through authority. The palace does not ask whether it has the right to take her body. It asks how to find her. Camsab is pressured, threatened, exposed, or forced. The vow that once protected the underworld collapses under state power. His personal promise is not strong enough against the machinery of illness, fear, and command. At this point, viewers often ask whether Camsab is the villain. The sharper question is worse. What kind of society makes betrayal the easiest path to survival? Shahmaran's death begins before the knife. It begins when the human world decides that wisdom is valuable, but the wise woman who carries it is disposable. In Tarsus, the story is tied to a bath, the Shahmaran hammam. Whether we treat the site as legend, memory, tourism, or sacred geography, the choice of a bath is symbolically perfect. A hammam is a place of water, steam, cleansing, exposure, and transformation. Bodies enter clothed by the world and become visible. Secrets that hid under fabric, dust, and daily life are washed into the open. That is exactly what happens to Camsab in many versions. The authorities search for the person who knows Shahmaran. The mark appears when bodies are inspected or bathed. The water that should cleanse becomes the instrument of discovery. Then Shahmaran is brought to the human city. In some tellings, she already knows what will happen. Her wisdom does not save her from death. That is one of the deepest sorrows of the legend. Knowledge is not the same thing as power. She gives instructions. Boil me. Give one part to the king. Give another part to the vizier. Let Camsab drink or eat the part that carries wisdom. The exact division shifts, but the moral pattern stays sharp. Shahmaran uses her own death to arrange justice, healing, and the transmission of knowledge. The king recovers. The treacherous advisor dies in many tellings. Camsab receives wisdom and becomes a healer. But none of that undoes the crime. The bath is not only where Shahmaran dies. It is where human civilization reveals itself, polished, ritualized, and still capable of killing the being it should have protected. The strangest part of the story is that Shahmaran's death works. The king is healed. The false or greedy figure is punished. Camsab gains knowledge. In some versions, he becomes a famous physician. In others, the wisdom of herbs and animals passes into human history through the body of the Serpent Queen. This is uncomfortable, and it should be. The legend does not give us a clean lesson where good is rewarded and evil is punished without remainder. Instead, it gives us a cure born from violence. Human medicine advances, but only after betrayal. The city survives, but at the cost of a hidden world. Camsab becomes wise, but his wisdom is inseparable from grief. That makes Shahmaran a powerful figure for thinking about knowledge. How much of what humans call progress begins with extraction? How often do empires, courts, and institutions take wisdom from people, animals, women, healers, forests, rivers, and underground places, then call the result civilization? The Shahmaran legend is old, but that question is modern. It is also why the snake symbolism matters. Snakes shed skin. They renew. They carry venom and medicine in the same imagined body. Across many cultures, serpents sit near the boundary between death and healing. Shahmaran's body becomes the most extreme version of that symbolism. She is poison to the guilty, medicine to the ruler, wisdom to the betrayer, and trauma to the world that survives her. The myth refuses to let healing look innocent. Every cure asks where it came from. After Shahmaran is killed, the legend does not end. It leaves a threat under the city. According to the Tarsus tradition recorded by Turkey's culture portal, the snakes still do not know that Shahmaran has been killed. One day, if they learn the truth, they will invade Tarsus. That detail is unforgettable because it turns the entire city into a container for a delayed apocalypse. The disaster has already happened. The queen is already dead. The betrayal is already complete. But the consequences have not fully arrived because the truth has not reached the snakes. So the city survives inside a lie. This is one of the most viral ideas in the legend because it works like a perfect hook. Under the everyday streets, an army of serpents is waiting for information. The only thing protecting the city is ignorance. But symbolically, the warning is even stronger. Communities often live with buried crimes. A secret can become part of the foundation. People build houses, markets, and rituals over it. They tell the story in a way that remembers and hides at the same time. The snakes who do not know are not only monsters in reserve, they are the moral memory of the underworld. If they ever learn what humans did, the surface world will have to answer to the hidden one. That is why Shahmaran's story lingers. The ending is not closure, it is suspended judgment. Tarsus is not simply haunted by a dead queen. It is waiting to be found out. Shahmaran is often female, and that matters. Not every version treats the figure in exactly the same way. Some art historical work notes that Shahmaran can appear as female or male in Anatolian examples, but the dominant popular image is the crowned woman with the serpent body, beautiful, wise, and dangerous. That combination is never neutral. Folklore often places feared knowledge in female bodies. The healer, the witch, the mother, the goddess, the seducer, the mourner, the woman who knows herbs, births, poisons, secrets, and the language of animals. Shahmaran belongs near that cluster, but she does not collapse into one category. She is not only a victim, she is sovereign. She is not only a healer, she is also a serpent. She is not only beautiful, she is untouchable until men decide they need what her body contains. This is why her image has been so resilient in folk art. She can look directly at the viewer. She can be symmetrical, frontal, impossible to domesticate. Even when hung inside a house as a protective image, she does not become small. She brings the underground into the room. Some scholars connect Shahmaran to older goddess or serpent traditions. Those links can be tempting, but we have to be careful. Folklore does not preserve the past like a sealed jar. It remakes it. Still, the emotional truth is clear. Shahmaran concentrates the fear and hope that gather around female knowledge. The story kills her. The culture keeps painting her. The popular legend is only one layer. In Turkish literary history, Shahmaran is tied to the Câmasbnâme, a story cycle about Camsab, the son of Daniel, and the time he spends with Şahmaran, the sovereign of snakes. The Turkish religious foundation's Islam Encyclopedia describes the Câmasbnâme as a work made of nested tales, including stories of distant lands, marvelous beings, and wisdom traditions. This matters because it shows how Shahmaran moves between oral folklore and written literature. A village story can preserve manuscript echoes. A manuscript can absorb older oral motifs. A folktale can shrink a large literary cycle into the one scene everyone remembers: the hidden queen, the promise, the betrayal, the bath. The Câmasbnâme tradition also helps explain why the story can feel larger than a local legend. It has the architecture of medieval wonder literature. Prophetic wisdom, secret books, marvelous journeys, talking animals, underground kingdoms, and moral tests hidden inside adventure. But oral tradition does something manuscript tradition cannot. It makes the story local. It lets Tarsus say, "This happened here." It lets Mardin paint the queen into its own visual memory. It lets Kurdish, Turkish, Arab, Assyrian, and other communities recognize different accents of the same figure. The result is not one clean source, but a living braid. If we pull only on the manuscript strand, we miss the household image. If we pull only on the household image, we miss the literary depth. Shahmaran survives because she can travel through both. Ask where Shahmaran is from, and the answer depends on who is telling the story. Tarsus is central in many Turkish tellings, especially because of the hamam and the warning that the snakes may one day invade the city. Mardin is central to many modern imaginations of Shahmaran because its stone houses, workshops, and multi-ethnic history fit the visual world of the Serpent Queen so powerfully. Kurdish traditions also hold Shahmaran with particular intensity, often reading her as a figure of wisdom, protection, memory, and resistance. Rather than flattening those claims, the documentary should let them create depth. Shahmaran belongs to a zone of cultural contact. Southeastern Anatolia and northern Mesopotamia have never been simple containers. Languages, religions, empires, crafts, trade routes, families, and stories have crossed them for centuries. Myths in such places do not behave like private property. They behave like water moving through stone. That does not mean origin does not matter. It means origin is not the only question. The more revealing question is what each place needs from Shahmaran. Tarsus needs the secret under the bath. Mardin needs the painted guardian in the house and market. Kurdish memory may emphasize the betrayed queen as a symbol of endurance and hidden sovereignty. Turkish folk art may emphasize the talismanic image and the moral lesson of secrecy. The same figure can hold all of that because she is already divided and joined in her body. Half one thing, half another. Never only one. A recent study of Shahmaran and snake symbolism in Anatolian mythology argues that the serpent in this legend carries a dual nature, protective and threatening, connected to transformation, renewal, life, death, and cultural identity. That duality is not decorative. It is the engine of the myth. Snakes frighten humans for obvious reasons. They are low to the ground, sudden, silent, and sometimes venomous. But snakes also shed their skins. They vanish into holes and return. They seem to know the earth from the inside. Their venom can kill, but poison and medicine have always lived close together in the human imagination. Shahmaran intensifies all of those meanings. She is a threat if betrayed. She is protection if honored. She is medicine if sacrificed. She is death for the greedy. She is knowledge for the one who survives her. She is hidden below the city, yet present inside the home as an image of luck and defense. That is why the story cannot be reduced to a moral like keep your promises, although that moral is there. The deeper lesson is about relationship. Humans live beside powers they do not fully control. Animals, illness, sexuality, memory, nature, underground water, plants, ancestral stories, and the dead. We can make treaties with those powers, or we can try to extract from them by force. Shahmaran is what the treaty looks like when it has a face. Her death is what happens when the treaty breaks. Camsab is one of the most uncomfortable figures in Anatolian mythology because he is both guilty and transformed. If he were purely evil, the story would be easier. If he immediately sold Shahmaran for wealth, we could condemn him and move on. But many versions make him more complicated. He is abandoned before he betrays. He is loved or trusted before he fails. He keeps the secret for a time. He is forced, exposed, or threatened. Then, through Shahmaran's own final instructions, he receives wisdom. The betrayer becomes a healer. This is morally dangerous, and folk tales know it. The story does not necessarily forgive him. It makes him carry the knowledge. That is a different punishment. Imagine becoming famous for cures that came from the one you failed to protect. Imagine every herb, every remedy, every saved life carrying the memory of the bath. Camsab's gift is also a wound that never closes. This is why Shahmaran can produce such strong emotional response. Viewers do not only fear the monster, they recognize the human. Most people do not imagine themselves as the vizier, but many can imagine themselves as Camsab, grateful, frightened, pressured, trying to survive, hoping the promise can bend just once, then discovering that one broken promise can change the world. The myth asks a hard question. If wisdom enters human society through betrayal, can wisdom ever be innocent? The answer may be no. But the legend also suggests that guilt can become responsibility. Camsab cannot bring Shahmaran back. He can only decide what kind of healer her death will make him. Shahmaran dies in the story, but her image refuses to die in culture. That is not an accident. In folk art, repetition is a form of resurrection. Every time a painter places her face behind glass, every time a craftsperson shapes her on copper, every time a textile carries her body into a room, the dead queen returns as a guardian. Studies of Anatolian art emphasize how widely her figure appears. Under glass painting, weaving, embroidery, copper, ceramics, stonework, sculpture, and modern painting. Some people have believed her image brings luck. Others have treated it as protection from the evil eye or harmful forces. In contemporary art, she can become feminist, political, regional, mystical, or simply visually irresistible. This makes Shahmaran ideal for a visual documentary. She is not trapped in one costume. We can show her as subterranean queen, household icon, tile pattern, copper silhouette, market object, dream figure, manuscript memory, and warning under the city. The same serpent curves can become cave roots, river lines, embroidery, steam, hair, scales, and roads across Anatolia. That visual abundance is part of the content, not just decoration. The myth survived because people kept making it visible. And the more visible she became, the more mysterious she remained. That paradox is rare. Many legends weaken when over-illustrated. Shahmaran grows stronger because every image seems to admit it is only one version of her. The Queen of Snakes can be copied endlessly, but she cannot be exhausted. In recent years, Shahmaran has entered global pop culture through streaming, social media, fashion, tattoos, digital art, and short-form mythology explainers. That visibility is useful. It means people far from Anatolia now recognize the name. A myth that could have remained local has become searchable, shareable, remixable, and visually alive in new ways. But modern fame also creates a risk. The algorithm likes simple categories: snake goddess, Turkish legend, Kurdish legend, forbidden romance, monster queen, dark fantasy, ancient secret. Each label catches part of her. None of them is enough. The older Shahmaran is slower and stranger. She is not only a romance plot. She is not only a creature design. She is not only a symbol of girl boss power or exotic danger. She is a story about the ethics of knowledge, the violence of extraction, the fragility of promises, the fear of women's wisdom, the power of household images, and the unresolved guilt beneath a city. That is the opportunity for this video. The hook can be viral without becoming shallow. We can begin with the snakes who do not know their queen is dead. We can make the audience feel the hidden city under Tarsus, but then we can earn the attention by going deeper into Câmasbnâme, folk art, Tarsus, Mardin, serpent symbolism, healing, betrayal, and memory. The best mythology videos do not simply retell the plot. They show why a story survived. Shahmaran survived because every generation found a new way to need her. So imagine the final scene. Night over Tarsus. The stones are cooling. Steam has faded from the bath. The markets are closed. Somewhere, a picture of Shahmaran hangs inside a house, her eyes open, her serpent body patterned with flowers and scales. Under the city, the snakes are still alive in the story. They do not know. That is the line that makes the legend unforgettable. It turns folklore into suspense. It turns memory into a countdown without a clock. What would happen if the hidden world learned what the surface world did? Would the snakes rise for revenge? Would the city be swallowed? Or is the invasion symbolic? The return of every truth a community tried to bury. Shahmaran's power is that she lets all of those answers remain possible. She is ancient and modern, local and transregional, protective and dangerous, dead and still present. She belongs to Turkish folk art, Kurdish memory, Anatolian households, Persianate names, manuscript traditions, Mesopotamian shadows, and the living imagination of people who still paint her face. At the end, the question is not whether Shahmaran was regal in the literal sense. The question is why a culture would keep telling a story where the wisest being is betrayed, killed, transformed into medicine, and then hung on the wall as a protector. Maybe because people know the world works like that. Maybe because they want the queen to keep watching. Or maybe because, somewhere under the city, the snakes are still waiting for the story to finish.